Unfortunately, I don't know anything about Electoral College.
Same, nothing at all.
I guess I don't know a lot about how it works. I think that I've always been confused about it.
I think the little bit that I know is it has to do with electing the president.
It's a certain number of representatives from each state that actually get to vote on who the president becomes.
I think it's based on population, based on every state, correct?
I have no clue. So, just to be honest, I don't know, but I'd like to know what it is.
The Electoral College is the system by which the President and Vice President of the United States are chosen. The reasons it was established are not known by most Americans. The framers of the Constitution established the Electoral College as a compromise between the election of the President by a vote in Congress and election of the President by a popular vote of qualified citizens. The term college refers to higher education, but it also means a society of colleagues. The Electoral College is indeed a society of 538 colleagues, or electors, who vote directly for the President and Vice President of the United States on behalf of the citizens of that state.
The Electoral College idea reflected the compromises that had already been made in the composition of the legislature. So, of course, in our Congress, we have a Senate with one state, one vote representation, which makes the small states happy. That is what they were used to before we had a constitution at all. It also has a House with one person, one vote representation, which of course satisfied the big states because their larger populations would be reflected. The Electoral College reflects the same compromise, and the reason it reflects that compromise is because you have the same number of electors as you have members of Congress. So there is an element of one state, one vote in the Electoral College, but there's also an element of one person, one vote. California still has many more electors than a state like Wyoming or Rhode Island.
Each state determines how it will allocate its electoral votes. 48 of the 50 states use a winner-take-all system that asks all electors to vote for the winning candidate. Nebraska and Maine use a proportional system. Their electors vote according to the congressional district. And thus, Nebraska and Maine electors often divide their votes between two or more candidates. Washington, D.C. is the only non-state to have electoral votes. The total number of electors is 538. A majority of 270 elector votes are needed to win the presidency. The electors are nominated by each political party and are attached to the party's presidential and vice presidential candidates. When voters in each state cast their votes for president, they are really voting to select the state electors, who in turn are connected to the candidate they voted for. 32 states and the District of Columbia require their electors to vote for the candidate that they are tied to. The other states do not encourage, but do allow the elector to vote as they wish, regardless of the election results. On rare occasions, the electors do deviate from their candidates and are called faithless electors. But that rarely happens. In the 12 elections since 1976, only 11 electors have voted against the candidate that they were tied to. Citizens vote in November. This usually results in a declared winning candidate, but the election is not official until the entire electoral process is completed. In December, the winning electors vote for the president and vice president. Those votes are sent to Congress in late December, and on January 6th, the votes are counted at a joint session of Congress, and the sitting vice president, as president of the Senate, announces the new president.
Joseph R. Biden, Jr. of the state of Delaware has received 306 votes. Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 232 votes.
The Constitution, if properly understood, is just one big balancing act. We've got states balanced against the national government. We've got the states balanced against each other. We've got each branch of government, judiciary, executive, legislative, balancing each other. We've got presidential vetoes and supermajority requirements to amend the Constitution, and we have the Electoral College. And all of these different aspects of our Constitution it is a big, careful balance to protect our liberty.
So a presidential elector is actually a real person. They're elected at the state level. The electors never meet all together nationally. They just meet in their own state. And then in December, they cast the electoral votes for president and vice president. The whole Electoral College process is a democratic process. It's one person, one vote, right? All the democratic principles apply just at the state level.
We live in a democracy, but then you hear some people say it's a democratic republic. So then what's the difference there?
A republic? I don't really actually know the definition of a republic.
I actually would probably struggle to differentiate between a democracy and what was the other option? And a republic.
The difference between a democracy and a republic. Ooh, republic just made me think of Star Wars.
The U.S. is a republic.
You know, I think people have gotten stuck on the word democracy, but we are a republic. The republic is designed to cool the passions of society. That is what the Constitution was designed to do, and by extension, that is what the Electoral College is designed to safeguard.
In a pure democracy, the popular vote would rule. But as defined by our Constitution, the United States is a republic designed to protect the rights of any minority from the tyranny of the majority. The Electoral College gives voice to minority groups who would be marginalized in a national popular vote.
In a republic, a majority is permitted to have its way, precisely because the minority still has protection, still can persuade. If a majority makes the wrong decision, it can't operate as a tyranny. It has to allow the minority to speak. And that minority can sometimes speak persuasively and become the new majority.
So, while a democracy gives absolute power to the majority, a republic is designed to protect individual rights. In a democracy, 2 wolves and a lamb vote on what's for dinner. The result is not good for the lamb. In a republic, the rights of the lamb are protected.
So we have to understand that America was designed to protect the ultimate individual rights, to make sure that we could protect ourselves from mob rule. And I don't know if these individuals who claim that they are in favor of protecting minorities realize this, but mob rule in America has never worked out for people that look like me.
With the Electoral College, there are 51 different entities managing the voter process in their region. That makes fraud on a national scale difficult because one would have to cheat multiple different systems with multiple different overseers in place. A national popular vote would likely lead to more federal intrusion into state-run elections.
Without the Electoral College, the federal government would have to take more control over elections, which means that presidential appointees would wind up running presidential elections, right? Barack Obama's people would have been in charge of Barack Obama's re-election. Donald Trump's people would be in charge of Donald Trump's re-election, right? The Electoral College pushes that power out of Washington, D.C., down into the states. States run elections, states are in charge. It's distributed. No one state controls the outcome.
The point of the Electoral College is that people meet in their states on the same day, not in one place, not in Washington. They meet there. The votes are counted separately in each state. They are then transmitted to the Congress. There is a double check.
That doesn't mean we get rid of voter fraud completely when it comes to our elections, but the Electoral College sure shrinks the space and the opportunities for it.
Do I believe that everyone has a voice in American politics today? Absolutely not.
The louder people seem to be taking over.
Compared to other countries, we do offer more of a voice to the people who reside here, but I do not believe that it's fair.
Well, my view is that every vote matters. And the way we can make that happen is get rid of the Electoral College and
You know, sometimes you hear people say, well, whoever wins the popular vote should win. And if there's more people in the cities, and if they win the popular vote, then that's just the way it is. And, you know, who cares about the farmers? There is no other segment of society that we would just look at them and say, your needs are unimportant. We can outvote you.
And we make sure that the small states don't just get steamrolled by the big states every time, that the rural areas don't get steamrolled by the big cities every time.
When someone is only focused on the popular vote, that leaves a huge gap to certain Midwest, northern states, the mountain states, the heartland of America, right? That means that their voices will not be heard.
In the 1970s, when the Electoral College was under fire, leaders in the NAACP were defending the Electoral College because they said, look, this forces the Democrats to care about black voters in some of these swing states where black voters could make the difference between a state going Republican or Democrat.
The Electoral College is what winds up giving minority voices, state voices, the voices of people who really want to be involved in the political system, even if they live in Nebraska or Kansas or Wyoming. It gives them a voice. That acts towards democratizing the system.
The United States is not alone. There are many countries around the world that do not use the popular vote to elect their leaders, including Great Britain, Canada, India, and Japan.
The Electoral College has become this catch-all for American discontent.
If we didn't have the Electoral College, then that would mean that the black vote would not be significant. Or any minority population, whether you're talking about Hispanic or Asian, the Asian vote. What the Electoral College does is make sure that all voices matter.
If you look at our recent history, we've had several candidates who have won the popular vote and lost the Electoral College. What does that say? And it says that an anachronism that was designed for another time no longer works.
You can think of the World Series. It's not who gets the most runs in 7 games, it's who wins the most games. And the Electoral College, it's who wins, in effect, the most states, not just who gets the most votes in total across the nation. And those are very different systems, but no one says the World Series is undemocratic because, you know, my team got 24 runs in the series and your team got 12, but they won more games. It's just each game becomes its individualized contest.
The Electoral College was the compromise created by the Founding Fathers that allowed the popular election of the president, but on a state-by-state basis. This compromise has helped ensure that candidates must listen to the needs of each individual state and not simply accommodate the powerful voices in our capital or our big cities. Without this large versus small state compromise, the Convention of 1787 may not have succeeded, and we may not even have a United States. Today, the Electoral College continues to protect the balance of power among the states. It also allows minority voices to be heard in presidential elections.
So if you feel like your voice doesn't matter, then you're less likely to want to participate.
I think your vote does count because I had a lot of friends in certain elections where they're like, I'm not gonna vote, it's gonna be fine, that's never gonna happen. And then things do happen and it's like, oh, my vote would have mattered.